The March of the Volunteers is the national anthem of the People's Republic of China, including its special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. Unlike most previous Chinese anthems, it is written entirely in the vernacular, rather than in classical Chinese. Its lyrics were composed as a dramatic poem by the poet and playwright, the Japan-educated Tian Han in 1934 and set to music by NIE the next year in Japan for the movie Children of Troubled Times. It was adopted as the PRC's provisional anthem in 1949 in place of the Republican Three Principles of the People and the Communist International. When Tian Han was imprisoned during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, the march was briefly and unofficially replaced by The East is Red, then played without words, then played with altered words. Restored to its original version, the March of the Volunteers was raised to official status in 1982, adopted by Hong Kong and Macau upon the restorations to China in 1997 and 1999 respectively, and included in the Chinese Constitution's Article 136 in 2004. History. The lyrics of the March of the Volunteers, also formerly known as the National Anthem of the People's Republic of China, were composed by Tian Han in 1934 as two stanzas in his poem, The Great Wall, intended either for a play he was working on at the time or as part of the script for Dian Tong's upcoming film Children of Troubled Times. The film is a story about a Chinese intellectual who flees during the Shanghai incident to a life of luxury in Qingdao, only to be driven to fight the Japanese occupation of Manchuria after learning of the death of his friend. Urban legends later circulated that Tian wrote it in jail on rolling paper of the liner paper from cigarette boxes after being arrested in Shanghai by the nationalists. In fact, he was arrested in Shanghai and held in Nanjing just after completing his draft for the film. During March and April 1935, in Japan, NIE set the words to music. In May, Dian Tong's sound director He Luting had the Russian composer Aronov Shalomov arrange their orchestral accompaniment, which is now often played separately as its instrumental arrangement. The song was performed by Gu Mengren Yuan Musha, along with a small and hastily assembled chorus. He Luting consciously chose to use the first take, which preserved the Cantonese accent of several of the men. On the 9th of May, Gu and Yuan recorded it in more standard Mandarin for Pathé Orient's Shanghai branch ahead of the movie's release, so that it served as a form of advertising for the film. Originally translated as Volunteers Marching On, the English name references the several volunteer armies that opposed Japan's invasion of Manchuria in the 1930s. The Chinese name is a poetic variation, literally, the righteous and brave army, that also appears in other songs of the time, such as the 1937 Sword March. In May 1935, the same month as the movie's release, Lu Ji and other leftists in Shanghai had begun an amateur choir and started promoting a national salvation singing campaign, supporting mass singing associations along the lines established the year before by Lu Liangmo, a Shanghai YMCA leader. Although the movie did not perform well enough to keep Dian Tong from closing, its theme song became wildly popular. Musicologist Feng Zikai reported hearing it being sung by crowds in rural villages from Zhejiang to Hunan within months of its release, and at a performance at a Shanghai sports stadium in June 1936, Liu's chorus of hundreds was joined by its audience of thousands. Although Tian Han was imprisoned for 2 years, NIE fled toward Russia only to die en route in Japan, and Lu Liangmo eventually fled to the U.S. to escape harassment from the nationalists. The singing campaign continued to expand, particularly after the December 1936 XXIA incident reduced nationalist pressure against leftist movements. Visiting St. Paul's Hospital at the Anglican Mission at Guide, W.H. Auden and Christopher Isherwood reported hearing a Chile treated as a hymn at the mission service, and the same tune, set to different words, treated as a favorite song of the nationalist 8th Route Army. The Pathé recording of the march appeared prominently in Joris Ivans's 1939 The 400 Million, an English-language documentary on the war in China. The same year, Li Pao-chen included it with a parallel English translation in a song book published in the new Chinese capital Chongqing. This version would later be disseminated throughout the United States for children's musical education during World War II before being curtailed at the onset of the Cold War. The New York Times published the song's sheet music on the 24th of December, along with an analysis by a Chinese correspondent in Chongqing. In exile in New York City in 1940, Liu Liangmo taught it to Paul Robeson, the college-educated polyglot folk-singing son of a runaway slave. Robeson began performing the song in Chinese at a large concert in New York City's Lewisohn Stadium. Reportedly in communication with the original lyricist Yun Han, the pair translated it into English and recorded it in both languages as Chile for Keynote Records in early 1941. Its 3-disc album included a booklet whose preface was written by Sung Ching-ling, widow of Sun Yat-sen, and its initial proceeds were donated to the Chinese resistance. Robeson gave further live performances at benefits for the China Aid Council and United China Relief, although he gave the stage to Liu and the Chinese themselves from the song's performance at the sold-out concert at Washington's Uline Arena on 24 April 1941. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor and beginning of the Pacific War, the march was played locally in India, Singapore, and other locales in Southeast Asia. The Robeson recording was played frequently on British, American, and Soviet radio, and a cover version performed by the Army Air Force Orchestra appears as the introductory music to Frank Capra's 1944 propaganda film The Battle of China, and again during its coverage of the Chinese response to the rape of Nanking. The March of the Volunteers was used as the Chinese national anthem for the first time at the World Peace Conference in April 1949. Originally intended for Paris, French authorities refused so many visas for its delegates that a parallel conference was held in Prague, Czechoslovakia. At the time, Beijing had recently come under the control of the Chinese Communists in the Chinese Civil War, and its delegates attended the Prague conference in China's name. There was controversy over the line, "The Chinese people faces the greatest peril," so the writer Guo Moruo changed it for the event to "The Chinese people have come to the moment of emancipation." The song was personally performed by Paul Robeson. In June, a committee was set up by the Communist Party of China to decide on an official national anthem for the soon-to-be-declared People's Republic of China. By the end of August, the committee had received 632 entries totaling 694 different sets of scores and lyrics. The March of the Volunteers was suggested by the painter Zhu Beiyong and supported by Zhou Enlai. Opposition to its use centered on the third line, suggesting that China continued to face difficulties. Zhou replied, "We still have imperialist enemies in front of us. The more we progress in development, the more the imperialists will hate us, seek to undermine us, attack us. Can you say that we won't be in peril?" His view was supported by Mao Zedong, and on the 27th of September 1949, the song became the provisional national anthem, just days before the founding of the People's Republic. The highly fictionalized biopic NIO was produced in 1959 for its 10th anniversary, for its 50th in 1999. The national anthem retold the story of the anthem's composition from Yunhan's point of view. Although the song had been popular among nationalists during the war against Japan, its performance was then banned in the territories of the Republic of China until the 1990s. The 1966 People's Daily article condemning Yunhan's 1961 allegorical Peking opera Xie Laoan was one of the opening salvos of the Cultural Revolution, during which he was imprisoned and his words forbidden to be sung. As a result, there was a time when "The East is Red" served as the PRC's unofficial anthem. Following the 9th National Congress, the March of the Volunteers began to be played once again from the 20th National Day Parade in 1969. Although performances were solely instrumental, Yunhan died in prison in 1968, but Paul Robeson continued to send the royalties from his American recordings of the song to Tian's family. The tune's lyrics were restored by the 5th National People's Congress on the 5th of March 1978, but with alterations including references to the Communist Party, communism, and Chairman Mao. Following Yunhan's posthumous rehabilitation in 1979 and Deng Xiaoping's consolidation of power over Guofeng, the National People's Congress resolved to restore Yunhan's original verses to the march and to elevate its status, making it the country's official national anthem on the 4th of December 1982. It was played during the handover of Hong Kong from Great Britain in 1997 and during the handover of Macau from Portugal in 1999. The anthem was adopted as part of Annex 3 of the Basic Law of Hong Kong, taking effect on 1 July 1997, and as part of Annex 3 of the Basic Law of Macau, taking effect on 20 December 1999. The anthem's status was enshrined as an amendment to the Constitution of the People's Republic of China on 14 March 2004. The use of the anthem in the Macau Special Administrative Region is particularly governed by Law 5/1999, which was enacted on 20 December 1999. Article 7 of the law requires that the anthem be accurately performed pursuant to the sheet music in its Appendix 4 and prohibits the lyrics from being altered. Under Article 9, willful alteration of the music or lyrics is criminally punishable by imprisonment of up to 3 years or up to 360-day fines and, although both Chinese and Portuguese are official languages of the region, the provided sheet music has its lyrics only in Chinese. There are no analogous laws in mainland China or in Hong Kong, where an English translation of the anthem is used for important events at the University of Hong Kong. Nonetheless, the Chinese national anthem in Mandarin now forms a mandatory part of public secondary education in Hong Kong as well. The local government issued a circular in May 1998 requiring government-funded schools to perform flag-raising ceremonies involving the singing of the March of the Volunteers on particular days: the first day of school, the Open Day, National Day, New Year's, the Sport Day, Establishment Day, the graduation ceremony, and for some other school-organized events. The circular was also sent to the SARS private schools. The official policy was long ignored, but, following massive and unexpected public demonstrations in 2003 against proposed anti-subversion laws, laws. The ruling was reiterated in 2004, and most schools now hold such ceremonies at least once or twice a year. From National Day in 2004 as well. Hong Kong's local television networks, ATV, TVB, and CTVHK, have also been required to preface their evening news with government-prepared promotional videos including the national anthem in Mandarin. Initially a pilot program planned for a few months, it has continued ever since, despite discomforting some locals who view it as propaganda. General polling has shown it has markedly improved Hong Kongers' pride and affection towards the national anthem tune. A 1939 bilingual songbook which included the song called it a good example of copied the good points from Western music without impairing or losing our own national color. NIE's pieces are marched a Western form, opening with a bugle call and a motif based on an ascending fourth interval from D to G inspired by the Internationale. Its rhythmic patterns of triplets, accented downbeats, and syncopation and use of the pentatonic scale, however, create an effect of becoming progressively more Chinese in character over the course of the tune. For reasons both musical and political, NIE came to be regarded as a model composer by Chinese musicians in the Maoist era. Howard Taubman, the New York Times music editor, initially panned the tune as telling us China's fight is more momentous than her art, although, after U.S. entrance into the war, he called its performance delightful. Variations. The march has been remixed by various performers. The American musician Paul Robeson recorded it in Chinese and English for the 1941 album Chilai, Songs of New China. The Army Air Force Orchestra recorded an instrumental version as the theme for Frank Capra's 1944 Why We Fight by the Battle of China. The Slovenian group Layback created an electronic version of the anthem with lyrics in both English and Mandarin for their album Folk. The British musician Damon Albarn included a loose and upbeat version on the soundtrack to his musical Monkey Journey to the West. The German musician Holger Zucker included a cut-up instrumental version on his album Der Osten ist Rot.